Yes. Oh, and we're live.
Sweet.
Hey,
We're live.
yes. Welcome, everyone, and welcome, Jamie and Lauren, to today's live stream that is about how China stopped the outbreak of the COVID-19. Um, so let's start with introducing ourselves. And let me pull up the little screen that I have, because on that screen it shows exactly how our different stories, because our stories are all a little different. So here we go, and I hope you can see it clearly.
Yep.
Okay, great, because I don't see you guys anymore. um, so yeah, how did China stop the virus? And today we have Lauren and Jamie here with me. Lauren, you want to go ahead and introduce yourself?
Yeah, so my name is Lauren. I'm from the US, specifically Maryland, and this is my 5th year living in China. And I left China in February, at the beginning of February, because I was stuck at home alone in my apartment. I figured I would take a short trip back home while I was still off of work. That turned into 8 months. And yeah, I just got back to China at the beginning of October and out of quarantine on about the 20th of October. So I've been out back in China for about 3 weeks now.
Wow, that must be exciting.
Very exciting, yeah.
To finally be back. And how about you, Jamie?
Yeah, I'm Jamie. I'm a Welsh boy from the UK. I've been living in China 3 out of 4 years because of COVID. The last year I haven't been in there at all. I teach design at high school in a Chinese school. I left on January 23rd to go on holiday for the Chinese New Year. Whilst we were there in Cambodia, our flight back to China got cancelled. And we actually met up with friends that we used to work with in Kuala Lumpur whilst we were in Cambodia. And they said, well, come down, stay with us for a couple of weeks because you can't get a flight back. When it all sort of settles down, you can, get back sort of thing and come stay with us. So 5 months later, we're still living with them because Malaysia went into lockdown as well. And then we finally managed to move out and rent our own place. And we got back 13 days ago, and I have 26 hours left in quarantine.
So you're almost a free man. Only a few more hours. Oh, wow. Well, and I am Yvon. A lot of you might know me. I've been in China for a while, and rather than leaving the country like these guys did, I decided to stay here in China throughout the whole ride. When it started in February, we talked about it, thought about it of leaving, but eventually we decided not to go. We had a little bit of a lockdown here in Beijing, and I'll talk more about that later, how that was. And I only had to do like one COVID test in the entire time. And I'm seeing already some people dropping in. Hey, everyone. Welcome. Good to see you all. If you have any questions for Jamie, Lauren, or for me, go ahead and ask them in the chat, and we will answer them as we go. So the first part that we want to talk about is the big decision. So at around the start of February 2020, right around Chinese New Year, the news about the virus breaking out here in China was spreading in China, the virus and the news. And many people who were actually living here, expats or even Chinese people, decided to leave the country. And you touched on it a little bit already. So we're going to talk a little bit about why you stayed or left, what the biggest factor was in your decision to stay away or to stay here in the country, and looking back at it, if you made the right decision or not. So how did your decision come about? Lauren, you were already, you said you were in your apartment.
Yeah. So I think we were maybe it was towards the end of Spring Festival when everything kind of started hitting outside of Wuhan. And so for all of Spring Festival, I was at home in my like very small kind of hutong apartment. And I knew I wasn't going back to work right away because things were going to be delayed. And so my family was being very, very helpful, but also kind of annoying with the questions and worry. And so I said, okay, well, I'm not going to be at work for at least another 2 weeks. Let me just go take a short trip back home since I have the time and I can't really go anywhere else right now. So let me just go see my family, ease their worries, and I'll come back whenever schools open back up. So I thought at maximum maybe like a month, but that turned into a little bit longer. And I was probably home about maybe 6 weeks when I was starting to make plans to come back and like looking at flights and everything. And I had pretty much booked my flight. And very similar to Jamie, my flight got canceled. And so before rebooking it, I think the new I think the quarantine rule started. And then maybe like a week later, the official kind of overall ban was there. And so I knew I was going to be stuck for a while. Didn't know how long, but
yeah, because it was, I believe, the end of March or the end of February. I think March when China decided to close the borders for pretty much everybody except for Chinese citizens. For those of you who don't know, and many people got stuck abroad. Jamie, what was your process of making that decision? You also got your flight canceled. You were hanging out with your friends for a while in Kuala Lumpur, and then did you decide to stay away, or could you also not come back?
Yeah, I mean, we stayed in Kuala Lumpur for a couple of weeks just because, I mean, there was a pandemic and that this is the first time in 100 years it's happened. So if a pandemic is starting or an epidemic is starting to break out kind of thing, you don't go running back into it. So we made the decision to stay in Kuala Lumpur for about a month. And then when we saw what the figures were coming out, and in Beijing, they weren't getting a lot of cases. So we then booked another flight at the end of March. And then on March 27th, China locked its borders and our flight was booked for after that. So we couldn't actually get back to China. We sort of and ahed about whether or not to go back to the UK because that's where we're from and that's where our families are. But when we then sort of like weighed up the costs of living in the UK compared to Malaysia was a lot cheaper. Our schools were still open online, so we were teaching to China time, and going back to the UK meant that we would be getting up and getting online at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and we finish in about 8 o'clock. So we literally wouldn't have any life outside of that because all of our friends would be working once we're finishing work. So we decided to stay put. And the initial sort of decision for us was Lucy, my fiance. She was just coming out of about a bronchitis at the time. So some of the first information that was coming out about COVID was that if anyone has an underlying respiratory problem, then they're going to be more susceptible with it than most. So that was our main sort of decision maker there. And unfortunately, like you, Lauren, we got locked out. We left it too late.
Yeah. So it really sounds like, Lauren, you were trying to come back and then you were just, you lucked out and were stuck, even though you wanted to come back. And Jamie, you guys were really thinking about, okay, where would we be better off here in KL or in UK? It sounds like work and finances also played a role in that.
Yeah, massively.
Yeah. So I decided to stay, or I had to stay a week because, of course, I didn't make that decision on my own. I decided that with Miguel. For those of you who don't know, Miguel's my husband, if you're watching. You can see him in some of the videos too. So we decided to stay eventually. We did consider leaving for a while because people around us were leaving and more people, were leaving, going to their home country or just on vacation and got stuck. We played with the thought, and especially because like some close friends, they decided to leave and we were like, okay, what should we do? Right now is the time if we wanted to leave. Flights were super expensive. And then we also have 2 cats, and they played actually a big role too, because what we were going to do with the cats, nobody knew how long this was going to continue for, right? Back in February. So where we put our cats, we would have to board them up, and we didn't really want to have them go through that. And then also with work, having to, if we would go to the Netherlands or the States, we would also be at a very odd and inconvenient time schedule with the time difference. It's like 7 hours with the Netherlands and like 12 hours with the States. And I could not imagine being like working, middle of the night and having no life outside of work, and then having to sleep because you're flipped.
Yeah. I mean, I had some colleagues who were doing that, and when we were on meetings with them, they just looked like zombies.
Yeah.
You
basically are a zombie.
I had a few people too that who I know were like they left. Some coworkers were in Sri Lanka, and one person was in the US as well. Like, I don't know how they managed.
No, I mean the toll on just simply the toll on your body, but like having your body clock reversed in that way must just be horrible.
Yeah, right. I can imagine. So now you're all back in China. Jamie, you're almost out of quarantine. So looking back at this whole process of deciding to stay, like deciding to leave or deciding to stay, and do you think you made the right decision, or do you regret your decision, or would you have done something differently?
Lauren?
Oh, sorry. I thought she asked you.
No, either one. Yeah.
Obviously, in retrospect, I made an unfortunate decision, but I think at the time, every time I kind of regret it, I kind of have to give myself a little bit more grace, because again, in the time of February, no one knew how long this would be happening, what the world would look like now, that China would just like close its borders with like no timeline of things. But yeah, I think, if a pandemic ever happens again, I know I know what to do. China's got some things in place. But yeah, especially with, luckily I was able to work and continue working with my school through online teaching through my year, through the school year. And then, they wanted to hire me back for another year and renew my contract. So I was very lucky with that. But it could have very easily been a different situation. I would have been stuck without a job, stuck without a paycheck, back home in America with like a question mark of what's next. So I got lucky. I was unlucky to be stuck, but I think, I was very lucky in being able to come back when I did, and kind of have the support here of my school here in China.
That's good. That's good, because I've heard a lot of stories of people who actually like lost their job or lost or their pay was cut in half because they were not in the country, and they were like, well, you're not in the country. There's no timeline. There's no idea when you're coming back, and we have to have people in the office or in the school. So yeah, we're sorry, but
I know.
yeah. How about you, Jeremy? Like looking back at the whole situation.
I mean, this is the first time we've seen this in 100 years. So there's no one around today who really knows what the right thing to do is. I mean, we can listen to all the epidemiologists and the virologists and all the science people that are out there who've got some great advice. But unless people are listening to it and following that advice, then the spread of it is apparent. It just grows and grows and grows. I mean, I've always been an advocate of if you don't know enough, don't do anything. And wait until you do know enough information. If you don't have the information to hand, how can you possibly make the right decision? So sometimes it's better just to wait and stay put until you can find something out. So did we make the right decision by staying in Malaysia? Would have gone back to China been better? who knows? That's like saying, well, if I just gone one number over on each of my lottery numbers, I'd have won the lottery this week. It's
Yeah.
the countries that we thought would be able to handle this really well have been the countries that have suffered the most. And the countries that the world considered wouldn't handle it well have actually done the best. What that's down to, I mean, you could look at sort of things like the governments and the way they're set up. I think it's down to the people of the country as well, massively. Their attitude towards it. There's a huge amount of parts in play to make this sort of thing go successful, and unless you're all on board with the right ones, and there's so many people, so many opinions about it, it's hard these days to get the right decision. So did we make the right decision? Well, we're healthy, we're happy, we're getting back to China. So in my mind, yeah, we made the right decision to stay put and wait until we knew more.
Well, that's good to hear that you're like thinking, yeah, like you made the right decision in that time. Yeah, could have been very different, right?
Yeah, obviously, yeah.
Yeah. I think I'm happy too that we decided to stay, because like kind of for the reasons that I mentioned before, like hearing now all the stories of the people who like it's so difficult to come back. It became a little bit easier a week ago, but then today there was like news again that rules and regulations are changing again and are becoming more strict again. Hearing that you have to like reapply for your residence permit or your work permit, and then knowing that people had to pay for the rent in their apartment here in China, as well as for the accommodation abroad where they got stuck. People who left with the idea, oh, I'm going on a vacation for 2 weeks during Chinese New Year holiday, and I'm bringing a small trolley with 2 weeks worth of clothing, and you end up living with that for 8 months. Yeah, I'm actually quite happy that we decided to stay, and lucky that in the end, eventually China got it under control, and there was not major outbreaks here in Beijing. It didn't get too many infections here.
Yeah, Beijing has handled it very well all the way throughout. I mean, we've been monitoring on Worldometer like since sort of day one that we got stuck out, and yeah, the numbers in Beijing have been very good all the way through, and that was part of the reason that we tried to get back initially, but we left it too late, unfortunately.
So that was a big decision, like deciding to leave or stay. So then, after you decided, what was the situation then? Because what happened after? What was it like to leave? Because countries were going in lockdown, and there's still so much unknown about the virus and how it was spreading, and whether it was like China and other countries were able to contain it or not. And it's like a very stressful situation for everyone, obviously. So how were you dealing with that, like getting stuck and not being able to go back? Because Lauren, you were really planning on coming back, and you had bought your tickets. I mean, you guys too, Jamie. But eventually you made the decision to stay, wait it out, right? So how was that? How stressful was that?
I think it was. I think the biggest stress for me was the kind of like there's no idea of what the timeline will be like. I think I was lucky in some sense. I've lived in China before. I know that you should kind of keep your expectations low of like how soon something can happen for you. So I think in my mind I was like, okay, when I realized kind of how stuck I was like, okay, let me give myself a year. Like I'll allow my brain a year that that nothing could happen. So I think that's what the kind of question mark of when I'd be able to go back was a bit of a stress. And as you were talking about earlier with rent and like your accommodations in China, that was a big thing. So I was throughout my contract that ended in June, my school pays for my apartment, but I knew that come September or August or September, I was going to have to figure out what I was going to do with my apartment. If I wanted to hire someone to come pack it up and then put it in storage. And then I would have to find a new apartment once I arrived. So I trying to handle the kind of day-to-day things in a pandemic and also outside of China was stressful in itself. So yeah, as you mentioned, with the the U.S. is completely 12 hours behind China, or 13 hours from where I live, and so all those things on top of the fact of being in a different time zone, a different country, is just that stress builds up. But I think I was thankful I was staying with my family while I was home, so that helped. It also was kind of comforting. It was bad, but it was like a little bit comforting when like the rest of the world started to like be pandemic, and so I was like, okay, everyone else is in the same boat as me now. Everyone else is kind of stressed, which is terrible, but it made me feel a little bit better that I was like, okay, I'm not the only one with this terrible predicament. There's lots of other people also in my shoes, and meeting other people that were also stuck outside of China, and trying to get back either for the first time. They were trying to be either new teachers or go there for the first time, or trying to return to life like I was. So stress upon stress was usually what it felt like.
Yeah.
And the stress, I think, didn't end. I don't know about Jamie, but for me, like this kind of stress finally ended. I was able to kind of relax once I like arrived in quarantine and like was in the hotel room. I was like, okay, like I could take a deep breath. Like I'm back. So
Yeah.
You finally made it back. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, I mean, like it's 2020 has been the year of uncertainty. That's what I call it. Every time you turn on the news, every time you pick up your phone, something else has happened. Like I saw a picture, and I thought it embodied 2020 perfectly. And it, like, because we had the wildfires in Australia at the beginning of the year, then the pandemic broke out, then there was the race wars. It's just been one thing after the other, and it was a picture of a wildfire. Though I think it was one of the ones that were raging in America, and in front of it was a sign that said "Wear a mask and wash your hands." And I was like, "That's pretty much 2020 in a nutshell, right there."
And it's not even over yet. We still have 2 months to go, and we're still waiting for certain results that we won't mention. But yeah.
I'm wondering if 2021 is going to happen, because I haven't seen any calendars advertised for it yet. They may have cancelled it. I don't know. I'm hoping it'll happen, but who knows? But that uncertainty it's a massive amount of stress on people, like especially in teaching. I mean, teaching is all about planning and getting everything in motion, sort of thing. So to sort of wake up one morning and go, yep, we're going to get on a flight, we're going to get back to China. And then you wake up the next morning, it's like the borders are closed. You're like, okay, so where do we go from here? And like I say, you just got to wait for the next bit of information to come and try and make the best you can of it.
And it's so stressful. It's all over the place. I remember my mother was like so worried about me and the whole situation here in the beginning, right? When the news first came out, and well, media will make it. Well, it was big, but they can dramatize. So my mom's like, oh no, my daughter, she's in China. Her husband, they were in China. Are they okay? So she was basically like texting me every day. Also, she has like no idea really of like where like Wuhan is and Beijing and how that goes to how far away it is. No, nobody really knows. So I was like, no, I'm fine. We're staying inside. We're washing hands, wearing masks, blah, blah, blah. And then I remember it was like the end of February when the first case was announced in the Netherlands. And I started to ask her too about it. And it's like, well, how are you? How are things there? And she's like, oh, it's okay. Nothing to worry about. We're fine. Whereas like she's older, right? So like I was like, okay, you are more at a risk than I am. So that was a stress
Yeah.
then for me because I was worried about my family, obviously, there in the Netherlands and not being able to do anything. Here, stressor for me, not so much because I was still here in like our apartment here in Beijing, and things were going okay. It was just stressful that couldn't go to work and you had to work from home and do everything online. That was a bit stressful. Yeah, but other than that, I think that was the main stressor for me.
The online teaching.
Yeah.
Well, working online, just trying to connect with people who are abroad, like working with other teachers, like collaborating and trying to talk to them while they were in a different time zone.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then just seeing how it was spread over the world to the rest of the world. Let's
Yeah,
see
I mean,
what
the online teaching was like, I mean, I teach design, so I teach a practical subject, and like the kids I teach have to make something as well. So it was like, right, and one of the projects is a clock, and I'm like, how am I going to get them to make a clock? I just don't. I don't know what I'm going. But they did. We managed to make like a cardboard clock, and they decorated it and stuff like that. And some of the results were really, really good. One kid actually made a full size grandfather clock out of cardboard. It was incredible.
Wow.
Yeah, I was absolutely blown away. But like trying to adapt, like being in a classroom to teaching people through this like a teacher is so hard. It's so hard.
I can imagine. Yeah, I'm wondering if anybody here in the chat also had to deal with similar issues. I'm sure there's people who are in similar situations. So I would love to read some of your comments on that in the chat. If you also were in lockdown, or if you also left the country, share some of that in the chat, please. Speaking of lockdown. Yeah, that was a whole different thing. I know some countries did very strict lockdown, other countries didn't. Cities did, some areas did. Like in Beijing, we were, I would say, in this kind of a lockdown, semi. It wasn't a full lockdown. We were still allowed to go out. Let's see if I had some photos here. Not of the actual lockdown, actually. So. Yeah, here. So we already talked a little bit about it, about work and what work looked like for you and family around the world. So about lockdowns, because I know, Jamie, you had a full-on lockdown in Kuala Lumpur, right?
Yeah. Malaysia jumped on the lockdown very early on. They only got up to, I think it was about 200 cases a day. They literally went up to that over a weekend, and the government just went, right, we're going into lockdown. They didn't call it lockdown. They called it the movement control order. But I think it was similar to what you guys had in Beijing, where you had to stay indoors. You couldn't go out to exercise or anything like that. Only one person was allowed out at a time, and the only reason you could go out of your apartment building was to go get food or to get medical supplies. There were police checks at random points, so they weren't all over the place, but you never really knew where they were. So as long as you were following the sort of guidelines that they were doing, and you were towing the line, sort of thing, you were fine. It was hard because there was 4 of us living in an apartment. All 4 of us were teachers, and we were teaching online. So there'd be one point where one of us would be on the balcony, one of us would be in a bedroom, one of us would be in like the spare bedroom, the other one would be on the dining table. And it was bonkers some days. And because we couldn't go out and exercise as well, we were obviously, putting on the COVID weight, and the alcohol consumption went. So we ended up running stairs in the apartment. That is the worst type of exercise you can possibly do, running up and down the stairs, 27 flights. It's just horrible.
It sounds awful. Like, oh, I can only imagine, like, if you're talking and other people are also talking in your apartment.
Yeah,
Must
it
be
was.
so hard and stressful and all on the
Yeah, it's
internet.
just, yeah, you're trying to juggle each other, sort of thing. Right, I'll be in here now. Where are you going? Are you going there? Do you need it? No, I don't need it. I'm free. What do you need to do? I need to record a video tutorial, so I need this room. And yeah, it's just crazy.
Yeah. Yeah, because did you guys bring computers when you were traveling? Because you, of course, had intended to come back and then you got like locked out. I know of people who, couples who both work and they had brought one computer and they both had to teach. And so one person was using a phone to get on Zoom and trying to teach a class and like, oh, this is my PowerPoint. Did you did you bring a computer?
I
Yeah,
did, yes.
I did
Yeah.
definitely. Yeah.
Oh, good. No, smart call. Smart.
My
Yeah.
Lucy didn't. Lucy didn't bring a computer with her,
Uh,
so I had my computer. I pretty much always take my computer with me because I do a bit of editing when I'm on the go, kind of thing. But because we were staying with friends, one of our friends is a digital coach in his school, and he had a spare laptop there, so Lucy was able to use that, and so we all had our own little facility to work on, kind of thing. And he was actually quite good being in his apartment because he had a green screen and all sorts of like technical
Oh,
stuff as
wow.
well. So,
Nice.
yeah,
Nice.
if you wanted to do something a little bit special, then you could. We actually we did a Zoom baby shower for someone in the UK. And we we recreated trailers from movies about babies with us as the actors. I haven't got them anymore. I give them away, sort of thing. But that managed to kill a few hours.
yeah.
So lots of entertainment during lockdown. Sounds like it. A little bit of work, a little bit of fun while you were on lockdown and or controlled movement. Here in the city, I don't think it was a strict full-on lockdown, but nobody was just nobody going out because everybody realized how serious the situation was, and they were strict on closing off the compounds. So the compound where I'm living, there is like two main gates and one little small gate where everybody sneaks through. Well, that one was soon closed off. They really sealed it, and then they also started to close off the main gates, and we got little cards, like some ID cards that we got 2 cards because there's 2 people living here, and with that card we were able to come back into the compound after we left. We had to show the card. Without a card, you would have to register, like write down your passport number, your phone number, your address, everything. And the gate was just closed. Like delivery people could not come in. So if something was delivered, like food or quality, you would have to go downstairs to pick it up yourself. They came to our door a few times to check who was living here. Excuse me, asking if we'd left the country, if we'd left Beijing. That was even in March, and I was like, no, I've been here since January. Where can I go? And as it loosened up a bit, there was a lot of regulations too, where like, well, you had to wear your mask everywhere. Still a lot of places you have to wear your mask. And whenever you would go into a store, restaurant, you had to sit like 2 meters apart from each other. All those things. Check your temperature. China has the health kit app that you had to show. So that was a bit what the lockdown looked like here in Beijing.
Yeah, that sounds very much like Malaysia when they were coming out of it. So they went into what they called the conditional MCO, which they've actually gone back into now. So they've reversed slightly because they had a peak in numbers. But yeah, all those conditions that you're saying there, it's pretty much what Malaysia is at the moment.
Yeah. How about you, Lauren? Sorry, I'm like scrolling through the comments too, and I'm seeing Baozi Boss. Love that name. Love Baozi's. He is like waiting for entry into China and haven't seen his fiance and Chinese family in a year. Oh,
yeah, I've heard some stories like that. That's just like, oh,
so sad. Hope that you're able to come back soon, Baozi Boss.
Yeah, fingers crossed, Baozi Boss.
But yeah, in the States, I think most people know by now that the U.S. did not handle things great. Surprise. So yeah, I remember like I flew back on February 2nd, and I remember like I think the day of my flight out of China, there was like there was like an announcement I think out of the White House that was saying anyone from mainland China was possibly subject to quarantine once they arrived. So I think I kind of had the mindset of like, oh, okay, like, you know, like I once I get back, like I might have some restrictions and stuff. But there weren't any at all. So I personally just decided to self quarantine for 14 days once I got home. Um, but yeah, I would say I was home about maybe a month, um, like kind of like fine and free. And then things started hitting, and I would say it was a couple weeks before masks were mandatory in public places. But for the most part, each state was different. So the kind of governor, there weren't a lot of kind of nationwide rules or lockdown announcements, and everything like was very general when with the rules. It was very generalized in its wording. So the state that I live in, Maryland, was pretty good about things early on, of closing shopping malls, closing like recreation places, gyms, and then everything that was basically still open was like pharmacies and grocery stores, similar to China. Um, and then eventually they started mandatory mask coverings. Um, but otherwise, there weren't a really like a whole nothing was very strict at all, and everything was very general with the kind of lockdown was just the lockdown of public places. There was no restrictions like in China of like if you wanted to go to a different state you could drive there easily. There was no really restrictions on traveling, and any kind of ruling of like quarantine or ruling of things and rules of lockdown were kind of suggestions. They weren't enforced at all. So if you wanted to take things seriously, you could take things seriously. If you didn't want to, there was no really stopping you.
Yeah, so
And
bizarre.
yeah, very, very bizarre. And yeah, so it really kind of depends. Like it really was kind of like your own personal like choices. So like my family and I were like, we're locking this down. Like we're not seeing anyone. So I was home for 8 months, but I only saw my parents, my brother, and three other people in my time that I was home.
Yeah.
Just because I knew eventually, like when I was, you know, gonna be able to come back to China, like I was gonna have to jump through a lot of hoops, and I don't want like being sick to be one of them. So, and I didn't know, like I was like, I didn't know if I was gonna have to prove like that I had stayed home all this time to China. I didn't know what kind of like requirements China was gonna need for me. So I was like, I want to like have all the documentation being like, no, from this date to this date, I stayed in one area. So, but yeah, everything was just kind of like, here's a suggestion, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. Land of the
So
free.
it's so bizarre that, yeah, that some countries um, take such a relaxed approach to it, or like different. That's what surprises me about the states, right? Every time when there's something's happening, just in general, just that all these states do just their own thing, and there is no national thing, even though it's one country, and each state can do basically whatever the people in that state want or what the state decides for them.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas in a country, well, then everybody has the same goal, like, and can go for the same thing. Now, finally, in the Netherlands, by the way, they're finally realizing that wearing masks is better than not wearing masks. It only took them a second wave to realize that, because now they have like a full-on second wave in the Netherlands, and they are like putting new rules in place, and I think they're now even considering putting a curfew in place through some kind of loophole in a law. They think they can like start a curfew for a week or two or something. So yeah,
Yeah, it's a similar sort of situation in the UK now that I'm seeing. I mean, they're going into their second wave, and it's making the first wave look like amateur hour. It's just gone through the roof, the figures that they're having at the moment. And I mean, you just look at the advice that they've been given in the UK from the ruling party, and the advice was confusing. There was no clarity in what you could or couldn't do. So people didn't know what to do, and they are where they are now because of that. I mean, if they'd reacted a little bit more proactively, if they jumped on it a little bit quicker, then they could have saved a lot of lives, and they could have saved a lot of people going into hospital. But again, it's that there's so many different parts in play with this in each country. Like even between the states in America, like you say, each state has its own agenda, and they think that what they're doing is right, which for a lot of things is going to be beneficial, but in other cases, it'll go south very, very quickly.
Mm-hmm.
I think countries are learning very fast now that they need to initiate this, and I think that they should make masks fashionable. I think, like, I've got a unicorn mask, and I love my unicorn mask. I think that's what they should do. They should print unicorns and stuff, and stuff that looks cool. Make it that you want to wear it.
Yeah, they should make it more fun to wear them and more sustainable, because like those masks are going everywhere. I mean, right now. I see like a lot of people who are based in Florida. But while we're at it, we've been going for a while now. I'm going to share my screen again, and this is really for the people who are watching. This StreamYard, I wanted to say that if you are liking the live streams and you want to see more of those, would really appreciate I would really appreciate it if you could like send a super sticker or even scan my QR code for WeChat, because these live streams do take some time to prepare and to schedule them. And the StreamYard that we use is also not free. We pay for that. So if you can support us a little bit, that would be great. It doesn't have to be much. Every dollar is helpful. We would absolutely appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you for setting this up today, Yvon.
Yeah, you're welcome. Thank you for being here. And if you're not following Jamie and Lauren yet, then head over to their channels too. Lauren's China Life and Jamie's channel is Life After Brain Surgery. And Lauren has a lot of videos about the quarantine and getting back to China, which we're going to talk about in a little bit, about quarantine and getting back to the country. But let's go to that. Here, the second big decision. We've talked about it a little bit already, but what made you decide to come back to China, and was it easy to decide to come back? And how did you decide that? Was there any were your bosses maybe even saying, "Hey, guys, it's time for you to come back," or not? How did that go?
Well, my school's been really supportive all the way from the beginning, trying to help us out any way they can, and setting up systems where we could teach online, as effectively as we possibly can. Actually setting up feedback systems as well for the kids and for the parents, and literally trying to take our school from being a physical thing to a virtual thing, or as much as they could do. So for us, sort of coming back was the stress of online teaching. I mean, you're sat at this miniature portal, this digital portal that zooms into your classroom, because I'm now doing hybrid teaching, so my class is there kind of thing. And they're in the class, and I'm here on screen like a big head on the projector. And like, I've been teaching some of these kids for like 3 or 4 months now. I don't really know them, because all I see is a tiny little head on the screen, and half of their face is covered like that. So I'm struggling to know them. So I'm really looking forward to getting back into the classroom and actually having a bit of normality again. I don't think, I mean, if someone asked me to be an online teacher full time, I'd just run in the other direction.
Never again.
no, it was hopefully a once in a lifetime experience.
Mm.
How about you, Laura? What did you what made you decide to really come back and made an effort? It sounds
Yeah, I
like your
think
work
for
was
me,
also quite supportive, right? Or not?
yes. So I actually, there wasn't the kind of effectiveness of online teaching. They didn't really do a whole lot with that. They kind of, it is very kind of like, I'm teaching a lesson, a very kind of like almost like a timed lecture, and then they would show it in class, which I didn't like. I know the students didn't like, so I'm
Mm-hmm.
also very excited of kind of. I'm an oral English teacher, so I'm not meant to lecture at them for 50 minutes. So I don't like
Mm.
doing that either. So I'm excited to see them again, see their faces, and like actually interact with them again. But yeah, I
Mm-hmm.
think my life is here in China. My job is here, and my friends, my second family. So it was never I never questioned coming back. Like I knew eventually I was going to come back here, but I think definitely I think now like of where things are at in the States, at least when it comes to possibilities, if I wasn't going to come back, of there weren't really many job opportunities even for
Mm.
me back home. So I think what's kind of strange that I've talked to other, especially Americans back home, is that their kind of views of China have changed a little bit for the better. I think for people that have lived here, we know like how great life can be and how like awesome China can be. But I think for people that have never been here, never experienced
Mm-hmm.
it, they kind of have a different idea of it. And so I think at first, I know we were discussing like our families like being really stressed out about things in China and how they would handle things and how things would go here. But I think finally people can start believing us when we say that like it's great in China, like it's things are good, whatever,
Yeah.
things are different sometimes, especially for us coming from Western countries, but it can be a really nice life here. And so I think with this time with me returning, I think most times I have friends and family being like, oh, just stay here, just stay here. I think this was finally the first time that people are like, okay, we understand you're trying to go back to a normal life, and that normal life is in China now. So I think that was kind of interesting as well.
Yeah. Yeah, when they finally realize what like the situation was is here. I see Trip Bitten is commenting on that. So yeah, most people don't know what China really is like.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, like we've had people visit us in Beijing, kind of thing, and they turn up and they're like, "What is this? What this is? No, this is not China. What are you doing?" And it's like they've got that 1980s view of China where it's still very Chinese looking, very much like Xi'an city sort of thing. It very much looks still like that. They think Beijing's going to be like, and people are on bicycles and stuff like that. They got this very sort of old school 1980s view of it, and they turn up and they're just blown away. They're just like, what?
Yeah.
This is not China. And you're like, well, it is. And I've always likened Beijing to New York, because when you're downtown in Beijing and you hear the sounds and you look around you, you could swear that you're in New York, because the hum of the city
Yeah.
is there, the honking of the horns. The only difference that there is really is that you're surrounded by lots of Chinese people. That's the
Yeah.
only real difference. And it always blows me away when I'm down there, kind of thing, because I do feel like I'm back in New York again.
Mhm.
Isn't it funny? Yeah. But it's like, yeah, it's not that different in some aspects. Yeah, some aspects are absolutely very different. But yeah, I
Yeah.
can understand that your family was like that, happy to have you go back kind of to a safe spot where things are under control. So
Yeah.
then, when you came back, now we're getting to the interesting part, because coming back to China was not so easy. There was a lot that had to be done, and we see a few pictures here already. Um, Jamie, is it on the left? Is that your quarantine hotel?
Yeah. So, so
Is it your? Yeah, you
yeah,
gotta
that was
explain
something
that
else.
situation.
Yeah. So the picture on that slide there is our second quarantine hotel that we were taken to. So we followed. We're in a lot of WeChat. Or my fiance is in a lot of WeChat groups, and we're on the Facebook groups as well. And you
Mm-hmm.
follow people who are coming through the quarantine, and it's not going to be a fantastic hotel, but
Yeah.
generally on the whole, it's clean. And the food it's Chinese food. You're not going to get any westernized food, but it's food that's tasty and it's edible. And you're going to have 2 weeks where you're relatively comfortable. You won't have the comforts of home, but you'll be okay. We did not have that. That would have been 5-star compared to what we walked into.
Yeah.
So we arrived at the hotel at 10 o'clock on a Friday night. We were the only foreigners on the bus for this hotel. So as we went in, the medical staff just sort of went, you can go up, because they didn't speak a lot of English. So like, okay,
Mm-hmm.
fine. Went up to our room. As I opened the door of the elevator and I walked in, it looked as if someone had been shot in there with a shotgun. They'd removed the body but not bothered to clean it. So that was the first. That was kind of
Wow.
the first warning bell. It was, and then it's just hard to describe. So we got a
Do you
floor
have
that
any
we're
photos of
on.
that hotel?
Yeah, I got a little bit of video of the
Front desk,
elevator. Let
or?
me just pull that up a second. Let me just mute it. So share my screen
Yeah.
here.
Yeah, you can share your
Okay.
screen, and then we should be able to see it if you can play it. So this is a short clip of the quarantine hotel Jamie was put in first.
Yeah. So this is the elevator. And it's just there's just grime over all the windows, all the door, all the walls, and the floor was tiled. It was crazy. It was just full of grime. So after we did that, there was the floor that we got up on. And let me just open up that video a second and share my
Yeah, I
screen.
saw the video already. It was pretty shocking what he saw there.
Yeah. So this is the floor that we walked out onto.
Oh my!
That was there. I had to stop then because one of the suitcases was running away. But that was where we walked out to on the floor. We then walked to our room, and we opened the room, and we were greeted by a welcoming party of cockroaches.
Oh no!
No.
I didn't get any filming of that. We just literally backed out and just went straight downstairs.
Big fat no.
Yeah.
Oh my god. So yeah, quarantine. Look, I mean, I get it that if your hotel hasn't had any business for a couple of months because there were no travelers, but starting to use it as a storage space and having roaches in the room.
Yeah, I mean, you're in quarantine. It should be relatively clean if you're in quarantine. I mean, that's the whole thing of quarantine, is it should be clean.
Right.
So after that, we went downstairs and went, "We're not staying here. We're not staying here." And a couple of the Chinese passengers that were with us who spoke a bit of English, they were like, "No, you have to stay here. It's a government requirement. You have to do quarantine." And we were like, "Yeah, we get that. We totally understand that. But we're not staying here. It's disgusting." And then they went up to their rooms.
If anything, you were going to get sick there.
Yeah, they went up to their rooms, came immediately back down and went, "We're not staying here. We're not staying here."
Like we understand now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Oh,
and a few more hours to go. 25 by now. We have hours gone by. Lauren, I've seen a few of your Instagram stories, also on Lauren's Dana Live, and it's just, I think you had a bathtub in your quarantine hotel.
Yeah, I kind of feel bad now with my hotel experience.
Oh my!
Yeah. My
so
my quarantine was a little bit nicer, yes. Like I guess I could say.
where was it? Somebody's asking, Jamie, where did you quarantine? What city was that?
So we're in Guangzhou. Well, I say we're in Guangzhou, but we're an
Okay.
hour and a half north, yeah, of there. We're literally up in the mountains.
Oh,
Up in the
okay.
mountain. Wow,
Yeah.
that sounds just wild.
Yeah, where
Just
we are
with
now.
you.
So I mean, I only had to. I really played on my mental well-being to get out of
Hmm.
there. And
Yeah.
there's also a hotline that you can call that if there's something wrong with the accommodation you're in, then you can call that hotline and they will try and do something about it. So literally 2 days after we sort of flagged it up, and our HR as well helped out massively. They moved us to what is a 4-star hot spring resort.
Oh, doesn't sound so bad.
No, it was much better, much better. It's been lovely ever
Too,
since.
too bad you can't. You probably can't use the hot springs.
No, unfortunately not.
Yeah. So that was a situation. Like, how about the food and like the costs of it? I saw, and I have another photo of lots of food from Jamie, and I'm not sure if that is like what it exactly is. Yes, here. So your hotel room, and then here it's an enormous table full with all kinds of foods. I see water, like peanuts or something, maybe. Oh, jars of peanut butter and whatnot. Ziploc bags with all kinds of things. Toilet paper. So, can you
Yeah.
guys tell me a little bit more about the food situation? Like, what
So
did you?
one of the things that was being highlighted in the groups that we were picking up on was bring snacks, bring snacks, bring lots of snacks. Just bring snacks, snacks. Bring snacks. So
Love and agree.
when we checked in our baggage, we were 19 kilograms overweight between us.
19.
19 kilograms. So
Wow.
it was 7 kilograms over, and Lucy was 12 kilograms over.
Oh wow. And
But
that
it's
was all
worth it,
because
isn't
of
it?
food.
Oh yes, oh yes. Bring the snacks. Bring the snacks. It's definitely worth it. And
Oh,
I'll give you a little tip, okay? Because you get so much rice.
Oh
I
my
was able
gosh,
to make
yes.
rice pudding.
That's so
Yeah.
smart.
So
say, can you
bring
say it again?
sweetener.
Did it? You
Rice
froze
pudding.
up
Have
for
you
a
ever had
second.
rice pudding, Yvonne?
Sorry,
Rice pudding.
not familiar with that really.
It's
You
a
brought
very
that.
sweet dish which has rice in it and milk and sugar. But if you bring
Mm.
sweetener and you bring milk powder, mix that into the rice, put a very small amount of water, and you have what I like to call council house rice pudding. So it's like poverty house rice pudding or whatever you want to call it. But it has meant that we've been able to get through all the rice.
Oh wow,
That's so smart. Yeah,
that's
it's been
yeah, clever.
interesting. I've heard some quarantine almost like culinary battles of like what's the best dish you can make out of the snacks that you brought, the whatever, what can you make with a kettle. I saw someone was able to make like pancakes on their iron. They brought some like foil and they made pancakes, and I was like, oh, that's smart.
That's amazing.
Pancakes on their iron. Oh my god. I got. I guess you're getting creative at some point. So, like, was there? So you brought a lot of snacks, but about the hotel, like they provide 3 meals, and can you order more snacks? Because I heard of a coworker who was in quarantine who like accidentally ordered like 10 packages of little I can't remember the name of the cookies, but some kind of like chocolate cookies instead of like one package because it doesn't speak the language. So can you order outside of what the standard meals are, or how did that work?
Where I am, we can just get the meals.
You just had the meals, nothing extra?
No. I don't know what it was like for you, Lauren. Was it the same, or were you able to order in from Meituan?
So for our hotel, yeah, that seems like it's like each hotel is different with their rules and specifications. So my hotel, we were allowed to order like dry goods, like from the supermarket or whatever. But they had like very specific rules of what they would allow and what they wouldn't. So you could, like, any liquids, pretty much no. You could buy like instant noodles. You could buy some fruit, but not all kinds of fruit. And you can't buy too much of it. I tried to order some chips one day, and I think it's also they check everything before they bring it to your room if you are allowed deliveries. So even if it seems like it's approved, they will, like, whoever, like the bao on the security officer at the front gate, if he says no, then you don't get it. So even if it's like a miscommunication or something. So my hotel, we were allowed to order things, but I couldn't order any food delivery, like from like a restaurant. They are very, very strict about what you could order. So even still, it's like a lot of junk food. And instant noodles. I don't want to eat any more instant noodles in my life. I think I'm so tired of them.
Oh yeah, I know that feeling. Not from a quarantine, but from a holiday vacation. But yeah. And actually, we're talking about the food, but earlier I saw something about testing, and that reminded me, like, the whole process of getting into, like, on the flight and then getting into China. How did that go? Like, I'm sure there was a lot of paperwork. Did you have to do many tests? Like, I have only done one COVID test the entire time. When we finally were allowed back on campus to work there, they were like, okay, everybody's coming back. You've been tracking your temperature. Now you have to do one test, and if that's negative, everybody's okay. Like, how many tests have you done in the past, like, 3 weeks in order to be able to come back, Lauren?
So before, like, back when the rule back then, about, like, I guess almost a month ago now, you had to have a negative COVID test approved by the embassy within 72 hours of your flight to China. It's changed since then, I think. But back in the States, it was kind of difficult to find like one specific place that would get it done on time, guaranteed. So I think overall, I took a bunch of different tests and threw it at the wall to hopefully one of them would stick and it would be fine. So I took about 5 tests before I flew, and then I had a test once I arrived in China, and then my last test of quarantine was like on the 12th day.
Wow.
So I guess 7 tests or 8, and then I got one more test just through Beijing. So I've gotten 8 tests.
Wow, that's a lot.
I'm an expert now. I think I've got it down. I can survive any test.
Yeah.
But the worst test I've gotten was the test when I arrived in China at the airport. They touched my brain. I'm pretty sure they touched my brain. That was the worst one out of all the tests I've gotten.
Did they leave the swab in and take their hands off as well by any chance?
Yeah, they're like, we're just gonna let it marinate for a little bit, let it soak, make sure we got all the stuff we need. We'll come back. Oh my gosh, yeah.
Yeah.
My one did that to me, and so they obviously shoved it up as far as they can, twisted it around a few times, and then it stopped. And my eyes were closed while she was doing this, because you're like, you're sort of trying to brace yourself. And I opened my eyes, and the nurse had disappeared. And I'm like, what? So she'd gone into the next cubicle to go and speak to someone, and then come back out, and then took it out of my nose. And I was just like, that's just nasty.
Yeah. So talking to you guys, I haven't really talked a lot about these things with people who had left and came back, not even with coworkers. But yeah, I'm even happier now. I did not leave the country.
Yes.
Horror hotels, like 10 tests, food, noodles for days. Ugh.
Yeah.
Oh. And now you're back out. Well, Jamie, you're almost back out of the.
Yep. Less than 25 hours to go now. Not that I'm counting.
And Laura is just back what is that like, Lauren? Like coming back out of like 2 weeks being locked up in a hotel room and then having freedom?
It was very strange. It was very surreal because it was like, I think, anytime you leave China and come back, it's kind of a little bit of a like, okay, like it's the smell's different, the sounds are different. But it was very strange in the sense that like you came back to China and you're here for 2 weeks, but like you're not actually in China. So when
Mm-hmm.
you do actually get out, it's very weird. And you also haven't, for me, I hadn't seen anyone for 14 days. Like, so
Yeah.
that was also weird. So it took my brain a little bit to adjust, like back to socializing. Because I feel like I hadn't even socialized in like a year because I was at home all the time with my family. So it took me a while to be like, okay, here's how to have conversations. Here's how to enter into a conversation. Like it was a lot, but um it was nice. It was a big relief. I was never more excited about leaving a hotel room and stepping
Mm-hmm.
out into the Shanghai air than I was after those 14 days. I was like, ah, yes, the smells, bring it on. I'm here for it.
And then not only the 14 days of being in quarantine, but just the 8 months of not being here and being like back, well, home, if you will
Yeah.
still call the US home.
Yeah. And so it was very, very exciting. So it's like weird. It's like you arrive in China, you land, and it's exciting about finally being back on Chinese soil. But then it's like you kind of have to pause it for 14 days. And then the
Mm,
14 days are up. And so you're like excited all over again about finally being back in China.
yeah. What about you, Jamie? Like, how is it being back? I mean, Kuala Lumpur, I know there's a lot of Chinese influences, very different than the US, of course. So, what was it like coming? Well, you have been in quarantine, but what was it like coming back onto Chinese soil, like Lauren was saying? And then, what are you looking for most when you're like let out of quarantine, when you're a free man again?
So when I'm free, I think the efficiency of the airport in Guangzhou was just, it made you go, you're back in China again, because
Yeah.
we didn't stop. Like for about 2 hours you didn't stop, and you moved from one place to the next place, and every time you got there you were there for about 5 minutes maybe maximum, and then you moved on to the next part, and they went through the whole sort of registering you at one part, then you had the test at another part, then you got your case from another part, and then you waited for a bus, and we only waited for a bus for about 15 minutes. So it was very efficient, very effective, and it was just like, yeah, we're back in China again. Like you say, Kuala Lumpur has got a lot of Chinese influence there, and I mean the biggest thing is that if you're in Malaysia, everyone speaks English,
Yeah.
and everything is in English. The business language of Malaysia is English, so it's very easy to live there. And coming back into China, like tonight, we had to register on another app, and so we had to screenshot, go into Baidu translate it, go back into the app, and just going back and forth into that sort of thing, because we can't read Chinese good enough to be able to do it ourselves. And we've been out of China for 9 months as well. I mean, we were able to start picking up little things here and there when we were doing
Mm-hmm.
things like that. So you could go, oh, I know what that is. I can answer that one, kind of thing. But because we've been out for so long, it's just, yeah, that language barrier, the culture difference. And
Yeah.
I mean, we're out tomorrow night. We're in Guangzhou for one more night. We're staying here, then we're flying back to Beijing. And we actually organised the British Ball. We're part of the committee for that. And
Oh
Saturday night
yeah.
is the
Oh,
British Ball, so we're going to that.
That's exciing.
that sounds
Yeah. So it's
good.
going to go
Yeah.
from just the two of us to 600 people in one room.
Oh, that's going to be a sensory overload.
Just the
Yeah.
So, I think we're almost at the end, but of course, we have one last. I have one last question, and I'm going to share my screen for that because, like, well, we titled this. There's one more photo of your food. So this is some of the meals that you got, right, Jamie?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
that's the direct
Looks.
comparison of the meals that we get there. I mean, on the one side, you got something that's very Chinese. You know, the fish wasn't particularly nice. The veg is okay, and the meats are okay. But then on the other hand, we got donuts and steamed buns, which you whack some peanut butter on and Nutella, and it's absolutely gorgeous. It's
Looks
quite
delicious. Um, and then here, like the question that the title of this live stream is all about, like, how do you think China stopped it? Like we touched on it a little bit that like people were surprised and happy for Lauren that like, oh yeah, go back to China because it seems to be under control versus other countries. So what do you think? Why was like, even though some mistakes were made at the beginning when the virus first broke out, how do you think China has been able to like to stop it now, and has the country been successful? Any thoughts? Any like, is it mask wearing, quarantining, testing? What do you, any thoughts on that? I have a few thoughts too, but
yeah, I saw a post the other day. It was someone had typed into Google and they'd screenshot. It was like, how did they get over the plague back in sort of the 1600s or whenever it was? It just went, people who were ill didn't go out; they stayed in their homes, and people who could moved into the countryside and kept themselves to themselves, which is literally quarantine. And eventually, the plague ran out. It didn't have anyone that it could come into contact to, and therefore it naturally went away on its own. And the last time we had the pandemic was 1919. Same thing there. People did that. And again, it went away kind of thing. So with epidemics, with pandemics, like viruses can't move on their own. They need someone to move them, or they need a body to move them. So if you stop the people moving, you stop the virus moving. It's as simple as that. And wearing masks, that helps definitely. I mean, there's loads of science out there that does it. Keeping yourselves to yourselves and just being a little bit more aware of it, of what you're doing, what you're touching, making sure you're washing your hands definitely helps. And at the end of the day, it's not about you. It's about the other people around you. Like wearing a mask is not going to stop you from getting COVID. But if you've got it, it's definitely going to prevent you from passing it on to lots of people. And washing your hands and things like that, it's saving the people around you. That's what it's about. That's what I think it's about anyway.
Yeah,
I agree. I think I remember having this conversation when I first went back, and I was like, if this thing ever like comes to the United States, I think there's not really a lot of things in place to like, there's just not things in place to kind of like handle it or take care of it. And I think when we talk about like China, like in China, when enforcements were put in place, like laws and restrictions, people took it very seriously, like automatically. Like there was not kind of like this time period of like people like refusing to wear masks or refusing. If it was very isolated, you know, but as a general, you know, nation, China took things very seriously. And if there were new regulations or changes, they were kind of like, because I remember even in the time that I was here, you know, in a week, things could be very different, whether it be being able to travel to a different province or the the use of the health apps and health codes and things. Things were, I remember even talking to people when it first started, they were like, that's crazy. How can they do that? How can they, or like, you know, why are these rules existing? And I think, you know, it was seen as very extreme early on, but it worked, right? So I think what, you know, could have been done sooner, yes, of course, but I think, you know, whatever was put in place and the information that was shared was very concise and very clear. Like you know, the hand washing, the mask wearing, what in the kind of education in China, just like in the public transport, you know, those videos that always show to kind of teach you in a cartoon like the good way to do something. I think that was done very early on, and people took it as fact, and they took it seriously, and they got on board very quickly. So I think that alone probably helped a lot. You think about it's like China's a massive population of people, and they were able to, in a span of a few months, kind of get things under control that wasn't in control before. So
Yeah.
a whole lot of everything they did.
Mm-hmm. The bleach drinking, yeah, I'm sure that helped too. There was a lot of testing too, like it was like just. I remember the first time when there. I have a little bit of echo. When I came back in June here in Beijing into the the fresh market, the meat and the fresh market, the wet market, Sifandi, I believe it was. Like everybody in the surrounding area had to go into quarantine, was being tested, and later they tested the whole city. I remember that they were going around our compound saying, "Okay, everybody."
Oh, I think Yvonne has frozen.
Yes, I think she's frozen as well.
This is the point where I'm teaching
I'm back.
online and people start getting frozen. I start
she's
singing.
back.
Let it go.
I'm back. Yeah, it
let
happened.
it go.
Happened the other day as well. Like after an hour, my internet starts to struggle. So I think the testing and even here recently in Qingdao a couple of weeks ago, they tested like 9 million people in a couple of days. So just the ability to like get so many tests, get so many people tested, and then get the results, and then isolate the people who are contagious. I think that's really helping. Yeah.
Definitely.
And I think that's like almost covers it. Like we've talked about how it started, like our reasons to stay or leave, what it was like to be away or stay here during the first wave here in China, how we experienced it, what it was stressful to work, coming back for you guys, and then almost release, and now how China was able to control it. Let's see if we have any questions or experiences that we can share from the chat. Because I'm happy to have a few questions to answer a few. Oh, I see one here. Guanbo Xiao, did you guys lose any speaking of Chinese being away for a long time?
I did, yes.
First question, Jamie. Yeah, Jamie, do you speak Chinese?
Nope.
No. Lauren?
Boo-how.
Yes. Yes, I definitely don't. I'm a lower level Chinese speaker. I have survival Chinese, but that survival Chinese was gone by the time I came back.
Oh.
It was a struggle.
Yeah, is it going to be easy for you to pick it up, you feel, now you're back?
Yeah, like once, especially like being back out in the world of in Beijing, ordering food, ordering deliveries, accepting deliveries, like that kind of, it's like, okay, yes, okay. How, that short kind of communication that's necessary on a regular basis, that comes back very quickly. So I was thankful for that.
Well, that's good. That's good. Well, for me, yeah, I didn't go, but I didn't like interact with my Chinese coworkers as much because I don't see them when I'm outside at lunch. Just in the staff room, I didn't see them, so I didn't have a chance to speak Chinese with them. So I really had to get back into the routine of speaking Chinese with them on a daily basis. It was a little bit of a challenge at the beginning, but I think, like Lauren, like it's easy once you get it. It doesn't really go away. It's still somewhere in your head. You just have to bring it back to the front again. Let's see. People wear masks. Oh, Baozi bus was getting stares in the subway in New York. Yeah, prices of the tickets. Bleach drinking. Oh, here's maybe somebody who join later. Lauren, have you started teaching again yet?
No, yes. So that's why I typed in the chat. I haven't started teaching yet back. Probably next week. After my students' midterms are over, I will return back to the classroom.
Yeah.
Finally.
That must be exciting.
Yes.
Yeah.
I hope they don't forget me. I can almost guarantee you they forgot my name because they do that even week to week.
Here, Igama of time. For you guys who stayed in China, is it true that China banned domestic flights but allowed international flights during that time in January?
Oh.
I'm not sure. I know there was a lot of cancellations on flights, but
I think it was probably still possible, but maybe it was like
banned.
You probably had to have like a, I don't know, like a reason for traveling. It probably couldn't just be for leisure.
Yeah, although in January was also right around Chinese New Year, so I think people were, they had to go back. So I think they were still, hopefully they were able to travel. I know people were stuck in certain areas, but I don't think there was a ban.
Yeah, I mean, January I was in Cambodia, and trying to get back into China was quite difficult. So I think it was very mixed. I think some of them would have been, some of them wouldn't have been. They just didn't really know at that point what they were up against, I don't think.
Yeah. Here's another question. Have you been able to adjust back to life in China easily? So I think that, like, Jamie is still in quarantine, so not really much adjusting there. Laura?
I think the biggest adjustment to life back in China was probably the language, of course, but that's kind of, that came back quickly. But I think for me, what's more difficult is probably like the amount of freedom that I have again. Because I feel like I haven't had this much freedom since January. And last time I was here is very restricted of, what people were doing in China. So I think getting back to the pace of like, eventually, going and commuting to work every day, Monday through Friday, having a standard 9 to 5 job, I think is probably going to be the hard part. Just because, I've been doing online work, not completely full-time, full schedule and everything. So I think that will probably be the hardest part, but everything else has been pretty easy, I think.
That it's probably going to be fairly easy. But then again, it can be different for everyone, right? Everybody's different.
Exactly.
I see that somebody still flew from Shanghai to Kuala Lumpur at the end of January.
Oh, wow. Okay.
So there were still flights. And here's, meanwhile, the Netherlands, the government and scientists are still fiercely debating if face masks are useful. Right now, they have decided they are useful.
That's good.
Let it go. Let it go.
Everywhere. Yes, we were live, but we're rounding up the live stream. We've been live for half hour, an hour and a half, not a half hour. And I think, like I said, I covered all our subtopics under the COVID, the big umbrella of COVID and being out of the country. If people want to follow you guys, where can they see more of you? If they are like, hey, that Jamie guy is a cool guy, want to see more of him, where can they find you?
They can follow me as Life After Brain Surgery on YouTube. I'm under the same name on Instagram as well, so life.after.brain.surgery. Look me up and give us a follow. Yeah, go. Oh, my chat is not coming through. I was going to ping you on the screen for a second, but my chat is not going through. So, have a trouble connecting. So, Life After Brain Surgery. And then Lauren, where can they find you?
Yes, so you can find me on YouTube here at Lauren's China Life. That's my name here. And you can also find me on Instagram. It's also Lauren's China Life, just all one word. And you can follow me there. Yeah. And I've got some, if you're curious about what my quarantine was looking like, I have a vlog up on there on my YouTube as well. It was a nice place, but I was very glad to leave at the same time.
Yeah. So go check them out if you want to see more of their stories and what their quarantine was like. Well, you can follow me here on YouTube under GoYvon and also on Instagram. So if you don't follow us yet and you'd like to see more of us, do that. And I want to thank you guys for joining my live stream and sharing your experiences. It was so interesting to hear them.
Yeah,
Yes,
thank you for inviting us
so
to send
much.
this up.
Yeah, it was fun. I enjoyed it. And thank you for everyone who joined the live stream and was engaging with us and talking to us in the chat. Really appreciate all of you who are watching. And
Yeah, thank you
you can always let us know in a comment under one of the live streams. They'll be up if you want to see more live streams, if you like them or not. All right, so we're going to end it here. I'll say bye, everyone. Bye, Jamie. Bye, Lauren.
Bye-bye.
Bye.